your martial arts movie podcast.
I threw that shit before I walked in the room.
Featuring drunken Thai boxer Will.
Too bad you will die.
The also drunken wrestler Mark.
I said I don't want trouble.
And drunken karate master Zero.
You've lost your balls.
And now,
Tall. I know Kung Fu.
You know, baby.
Fists of Fail.
Zero, it is still MMA.
Yes,
and
it is.
We decided to put that on hold, kinda, right?
Yeah,
Kinda.
kind of. We got kind of lucky for this one because there's actually a new release, a new martial arts release, very surprisingly. And we watched The Paper Tigers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who'd have thunk that we would have gotten two new releases almost back to back? Obviously, we had Girl's Blood in between, masterpiece of a film. But yeah, Paper Tigers. It's an indie martial arts movie. Written, directed by Bao Tran, and starring Elaine Oy, Roger. No, not Roger. Well, I guess Roger as well. Ron Yuan, Mikhail Shannon Jenkins, and I guess you can kind of say Roger Yuan as well, the brother of Ron Yuan, who I did not realize they were related until watching this movie. I was like, I bet they know. There must be some sort of coincidence, and then I looked it up. I'm like, oh shit, they are related. So yeah, Paper Tigers, very good movie. I enjoyed this film quite a bit. I don't know, it's a very different, very unique experience, but I had a blast watching it. Right? Well, I don't know if you agree, Zero.
Yeah, this was pretty good. It was very entertaining. It's refreshing because it's kind of a different take on martial arts films. I can't recall a martial arts film that has the older leading males as stars, and they're intentionally kind of out of shape. They're out of it. They're not 100% like their younger counterparts. And they lean into that with the characters and their physicality as well. So we've seen martial arts films before where you have the old master and then suddenly he's a stuntman and he's doing backflips and he's, jumping all over the place, and we're always calling bullshit on that kind of stuff. So it's kind of nice that you have these 40, 50-something-year-old actors playing to their age, and then also it's realistic in the sense that they're not the quickest, they're not the fastest, and they indeed feel a lot of pain when they get hit.
Yeah. I think you kind of hit over the head. Well, let's go back to like a movie like Ninja, right? Where there's an old man who suddenly gets a stunt double whenever he needs to do backflips and all these crazy acrobatic moves. And it's very unfitting. And that actually kind of just naturally segues us into what this movie's, or Paper Tigers, is all about. It's about three kind of estranged students of Roger Yuan, who have all had a falling out between each other and also with Roger, with their Sifu as well. And they haven't talked to each other in 15 years, I guess. And they also haven't been practicing martial arts during all that time. So they're obviously very rusty. So when the news occurs that the Sifu died of a heart attack, it kind of turns into a conspiracy and then devolves into a murder mystery. Mm-hmm. And weirdly enough, that's actually where a lot of the fun comes from. Like you kind of want to see where the next story beat is, and it like devolves or evolves from there. And it's weird because watching this movie, or like listening to the press before this film, a lot of the filmmakers or the people involved in it, like they were almost like referencing Karate Kid as a example, right? That's like a frame of reference, and I can kind of see that, but I kind of don't.
You mean they were comparing this film to Karate Kid?
Yeah. Like the press itself was like comparing this to like the Karate Kid films, and I
find that kind of strange.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's no murder mystery in Karate Kid. I mean, we find out who sweeps the leg at the end, so.
I think it's more like the coming of age story, I guess. Although, I
don't know,
maybe
coming into middle age.
Maybe not so much the Karate Kid. How about a better comparison would probably be Cobra Kai, right? The Cobra Kai series. I think that's very comparable to that.
Yeah. Okay, Cobra Kai, definitely makes more sense considering you have the returning actors from Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, who are now of their age playing the characters' current age. And well, it's interesting because they both still practice karate in that series, but they're pretty competent at it. But when they get hurt, it really hurts them because they're older.
Yeah,
in this movie, they are kind of out of touch, or at least two of them are.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, there's obviously there's some distinction, there's some similarities, but there's a lot of distinctions. I mean, besides their proficiency in martial arts, these characters in this film lack it, and all those characters. One defining feature of this movie is that it's primarily a minority cast, and that's actually kind of a breath of fresh air, right? It's and this is me not trying to politicize this movie whatsoever, but it's kind of nice to just like have a film that's like it's in pretty much all Asian cast for the most part, and it doesn't feel like it's pandering, which it could easily fall into that trap because it's Asians and it's martial arts, and it doesn't feel like it's falling into a stereotype, right? It feels like it's doing it honorably.
This doesn't, well, it's not a Hollywood movie, but it doesn't feel like it was written by or meddled with by some Hollywood exec who was trying to hit all the PC checkboxes. Like, oh, make sure you write for this group and make sure you have these things because you don't want to offend anybody. No, like, they're not doing that at all. This just happens to be a group of two Asian middle-aged men and a African-American middle-aged man, and they're just trying to figure out why their Sifu died. Yeah. And it's nice. There's no, like you said, there's no pandering. If anything, we get the token white character who is actually really great comic relief, and he's one of those characters that he's in there just enough where he says everything he says is like golden. And then that's it. You don't need any more from him. They're not wedging him in there. He's actually he's a joke because he's one of those characters who is what would you say, like a Asiaphile?
I guess so. Yeah, he's obsessed with Asian culture, well, Chinese culture.
Yeah.
I mean, part of his backdrop or backstory as a supporting role is that he always lost fights with the three tigers, who are the three main characters, as when they were younger. So as a middle-aged man, it's amazing that he kept up his shape and his martial arts, but it's also kind of pathetic at the same time because that's all he's been doing since. And he's just still kind of on this like revenge plot, I guess, in his mind. He's like, oh, I'm gonna beat them one day, but it's like he clearly hasn't moved on.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the story is kind of about that, in that, as you mentioned, so this character Carter, he was kind of antagonized a little bit by the main characters. So you find out that the main characters are kind of dicks in the beginning of the movie. They're very rambunctious teenagers. They're overtly cocky, and they even go to dojos. They do dojo busting, I believe they said. Basically, I'm pretty sure that's implying that they would go to dojos and just challenge them and then beat up the students there. Which is, I mean, when you think about it, they're doing it very fun and in a kind of jovial way, but that's kind of dickish as well.
Yeah.
So when they get older, it kind of comes back around to the main character. What's the main character's name?
Elaine Oy. Well, are you talking about the actual
Danny.
character name?
Yeah.
Danny.
Elaine Oy, his character Danny. He's kind of become a pacifist, it seems like.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's fitting, right? Because not only has he given martial arts, but he's given up martial arts so he can't physically be as imposing as he used to be. But also he's older, like why get in fist fights, as an older folk, that's something for like the younger generation, the hot-headed generation.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting in that he has a son and you find out that the son is getting bullied, and it's almost like it's coming back. It's almost kind of like karma. He was going around antagonizing other people, and now it's happening to his son. It always surprises me how these stories keep on coming up, and then we still have people who are like shitty kids or shitty teenagers, and then you watch these movies and you would think, oh yeah, that's probably gonna happen. I should learn from this, but no, just people are. People are bad people sometimes.
Right. I mean, history repeats itself, That's what it is. And yeah, at first you don't like the well, not that you don't like them, but you know, they're just hot-headed, not angsty, but they're teenagers who just like to get into fights, and that's actually the first portion of the beginning of the film, which is. Oh, this is kind of rough to say this, but it's the best, in my opinion, the best portion of the movie regarding action. And I don't mean to jump right into it right away, and we can break it down more technicals later, but in terms of actual demonstration of action, the very beginning of the movie is immediately hooks you in, because after we get introduced to the tigers as kids, and you know they get introduced to Roger Yuan, we get introduced to Roger Yuan training them. He tells them, you know, do not fight for just the sake of fighting, and of course it immediately cuts to the kids as teenagers, just roughing up kids, like people, and just taking down dojos across the city. And like that portion is actually very interesting because it's all shot on, I believe, actual VHS. I don't think it's actually they did that VHS effect in post. I think it's VHS.
It kind of looks like it. Yeah, it looks, intentionally crummy, kind of overblown, oversaturated at times and blown out from the sunlight. I hope it's VHS. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, and not to get into the technicals yet, but I think that this portion is actually very good in terms of choreography. Like all of it feels like an actual backyard brawl, minus the incredibly synchronized choreography. But if not for that, like I think that like this part really stands out, especially since it's kind of like introduced to us as almost like a montage. It's like, oh, here's one fight, and then here's another fight, and then like you can see each part of it in great detail. And I think a lot of it stands out because of the fact that it's on VHS. So yeah, I mean, like it's a good way to hook you in, and obviously throughout all this, you also get introduced to Carter's character, who's just desperately trying to win every fight with Danny Eight Hands, the main character, and he just loses spectacularly every time.
Yeah, he's our Guaylo token white character who I mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
it's funny. He kind of seems like a little hot-headed as well, and then I guess because the main character, it's hard to tell. Did they say if Carter's character was the one constantly asking for a fight, or was it the other way around?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think initially it was when they were young, like preteens. It seems like he was the one saying that or gloating that his kung fu is the best, and then it just became a never-ending cycle after that point. I think that's what they're trying to imply. Carter, by the way, the adult version later in the film is played by Matthew Page. For those of you who are interested or even know who that is, Matthew Page plays Master Ken on YouTube. I don't know if you know who that is, Zero. Master Ken. Oh man, he he has a YouTube series called Enter the Dojo, and they're basically parody martial arts videos. He has quite a following. One of his more famous videos I watched was how to fight the coronavirus. Like everything he does is just like obviously based off of like parodying like martial arts like
tropes.
Yeah, exactly. And like I didn't actually recognize him watching the movie, and then when I looked in the IMDb later, I'm like, oh shit, he looks very different with blonde hair and no beard. So,
I thought he looked like a very buff Ed Helms, and I could not get that image out of my mind every time he was on screen.
Yep, that's a very apt description. So across the board, you'll actually get quite a few martial arts names in this film. One really important standout here is the fact that we have the Martial Club as part of this film production as well, who we have mentioned in the past before. And I obviously wanted to point that out, and we mentioned Matthew Page as well, Roger Yuan. And one thing that's part of the trailers for this movie that's like heavily promoted is what's his full name? Yuji Okumoto, who was one of the producers for this film. They feature him heavily in the trailer, but he only has 2 scenes in this movie as a waiter. And
oh yeah. He was in The Karate Kid 2.
Yes. I think they're just working off of the fact that was in those movies, but he's like not in the movie at all.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I never watched the trailer actually. Once I heard the premise and heard the movie was coming out, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna watch it. I'm not gonna look at anything. But I mean, you know how it is. Your famous names, you kind of just have to put front and center, and just hope that that aspect sells the movie. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I don't know if this is a spoiler or anything like that, but there's one throwaway line that he says was like, maybe I can learn some kung fu with you guys too. And then one of the main characters says, "Oh, the paper tigers and the Karate Kid." I was
Wah,
like,
wah.
Anyways,
it's fine.
all those little nitpicky things and all those little trivia things, thrown aside, the movie in general is like a very enjoyable experience in my opinion. And I guess I don't know, is that all before we get into the technicals?
Yeah, I think we can. One random note I wanted to point out: at least according to IMDb, the director Tran Bao. He was the editor of a Vietnamese film called Cho Long. I've mentioned this to you before. This is the Johnny Nguyen film, his last martial arts film that never got released because of the government or the censors or whatnot. He's listed as the editor of that film, which I thought was really interesting.
All right,
because I think he didn't do any other movies besides this one, full movies. Like this is I think this is his directorial debut, and then he's done shorts.
Okay. Well, I know that Bao and Ken Kitigwa. Oh man, I'm butchering his name. Kitigwa. So those two, when they wanted to pitch this idea, they went through all the hoops to make sure that they did. It wasn't whitewashed. It came out exactly as it needed to come out, and I commend it for it. I think the final product actually, was spot on. Like it didn't need it to be altered through a Hollywood committee. Like this needs to mark all those check boxes, like you said before. It needs to be changed because of that. So I don't know. I don't think the final product, is it's a testament to all that. But that's the Paper Tigers. Yeah. This movie's been in production, or at least they've been drafting this movie for like 10-ish years now. And
Wow.
yeah, I know. I'm glad that it finally came out. And I don't know. I generally had a good time watching it. Even the second time around, like, oh, this is very entertaining. Even though normally speaking, I would not think this would be a good format for our show. But I don't know. What do you think, Zero?
Yeah, despite all the kind of nitpicks I had while we were discussing it, I still enjoyed the movie. When I like something, I tend to be critical just because I don't know, that's kind of how I am. Like I like something, but I can still see the flaws, and I will like to point it out just because if they get a sequel, hopefully they can kind of address these sorts of things. I agree with you. If this was not a new release, this may not be the one we could break down that easily because the fights are just really, really simple. Although they're good, but it doesn't lend itself to our format so much because of how quick the fights are and how simple they are. But this is one of those ones where I recommend the movie because it's just it's a good watch. But watching the fights out of context, it doesn't really work. Like the fights work in context of the film, and you should just watch the movie.
Sure. Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. I think that's perfectly makes sense to me. I think the movie, maybe like an extra addition to that is that the movie is perfectly palatable for the common moviegoer, right? It's like I feel like anyone can watch this and still have a good time with it. Martial arts choreography aside, like the movie making the filmmaking is generally solid across the board, like with the little nitpicks that we mentioned before. But those are that's exactly what they are. They're nitpicks. I think the movie's very entertaining, very funny. Action's pretty okay. I mean, but you're not in it for that. I mean, even though we do get some okay action at times. But I think that the reason why, like, even if this wasn't a new release, I liked it enough that maybe I would have vouched for this to become an episode anyways, because a long time ago there was a time when you and Mark recommended that we watch another movie that I ultimately want to pass on. It was called The Art of Fighting with
The Art of Self-Defense.
Art of Self-Defense, sorry, with
Jesse Eisenberg.
And I watched that and I did not understand why you guys liked it.
I like that movie.
I know.
It's
weird.
about martial arts. It's not so much about fight choreography.
Yeah, even though but there's also fighting in that movie too, like little tiny bouts, right? From what I remember.
There are some smaller fight. Yeah. Like that movie is not a martial arts movie in the way that we get long bouts of choreography. We get very complicated fight scenes. That was more about preying on the insecurities of a very timid man and how learning self-defense is a good ego boost, but it can actually be very toxic. That's kind of what's going on in that movie.
Yeah, I didn't understand that movie. I did not like it at all, but apparently you guys did. But I'm glad you enjoyed this one, and you felt we could talk about it. But at least there's actual action in this movie, and we don't have Mark Zuckerberg in this movie.